this is Paul Gosling. He is one of our scientists at AHDB, project manages a lot of the research that we do around weeds and also fungicide performance. So him and Ryan are doing a bit of a double act today, and they're going to talk you through the trial that you completed.
So I'm going to start off and I'm just going to explain a little bit about what we're doing here and why we're doing it, and then Brian's going to talk about what's actually in the field, because this is the first time I've seen it as well. So what's going on there? Well, if you look at what we've been doing with weeds and wheat fungicides, particularly over the last 15 years, it doesn't really look very sustainable. If you look at the pesticide usage surveys that DEFRA do, the last 15 years we've gone from about 20% of wheat crops getting a T0 to now about 80% of wheat crops get a T0. Similar sort of situation with T3, we've gone from 50% of crops up to 70% of crops. Obviously that has implications on costs, and it's not really very sustainable from an environmental point of view. We can't just keep putting more and more fungicides onto our wheat crops. And one reason we can't keep putting fungicides on is because we're losing them. We've lost a lot of fungicides through, or a lot of activity legislation. You think about what we've lost from the fungicide front recently. We lost Cherokee, a big T0 product. Morpholines are going. Poxyconazole has been a mainstay of rust control. That's going, almost certainly going to go. Tebuconazole is probably going to go. We may even lose metconazole. The azoles are going to be devastated. And of course, recently we've lost chlorothalonil. We're going to lose chlorothalonil. Next year will be the last year we can use chlorothalonil. And that has been, we've been leaning on that for our septoria control. It's a cheap, easy way to control septoria. And without that, we're going to have real problems with maintaining our control of resistance. Because that's the other thing that's killing us. It's not just the fact that we're losing actives to legislation, we're losing them to resistance as well. The azole situation has been declining for a number of years now. It's a long story. But the azoles are giving us at best 50-60% control if we get them in a protectant situation. That seems to have stabilised over the last 3 or 4 years. The azole decline seems to have halted at the moment, but we've lost all the kickback activity from azoles, and we may lose them all through or most of them through legislation. On the SDHIs have done pretty well for us, but they are starting to slip. About 50% of the population of septoria in the UK now has some sort of mutation which gives it low to moderate levels of resistance to septoria. We know there are mutations out there that give complete resistance to SDHIs. Luckily so far they haven't spread. You see them about 2-3% in most places of the septoria population. Last year, 2018, we picked up 2 mutations we've never seen before at 2 separate sites, completely resistant to SDHIs. You don't know what's going to happen with those. These sort of things occasionally appear then disappear, or they could spread and we have another stray valerian situation where they completely go. Yes, we've got new chemistry coming along, but it's going to be difficult to protect that from resistance because we've lost chlorothalonil. Yes, we've got other multi-sites, mancozeb and folpep. They don't perform as well. They're not going to give that same level of protection that chlorothalonil has. And if we lose SDHIs to resistance, we're really going to struggle to protect this new chemistry. So that leaves us questioning how we're going to manage wheat going forward. Well, it sounds all really bad on the resistance and the fungicide point of view, but the breeders have been doing a good job for us. We've got the new varieties coming through now with high levels of septoria resistance. Yes, the rust issue is always a bit up and down. We have got varieties out there now who are pretty resistant. So how are we going to manage these varieties? Well, we've been doing some work at AHDB with BASF over the last few years, looking at these new more resistant varieties, looking at fungicide programs on them, looking at drilling dates, because of course everyone's got blackgrass now, so everyone's pushing the drilling dates back. That gives an advantage for disease control as well, because later drill crops have a lower pressure from septoria and yellow rust, less eye spot in those crops. So we should have less disease pressure. We've got better varieties to control those diseases. So we need to be thinking now about how we're going to control those diseases in those crops. We should be able to do that with lower fungicide inputs. That takes the cost down, it takes the pressure down for resistance development. It's a win-win situation if we can learn to manage these new varieties properly. And that is what we've been doing with BASF. it looks like there's no point in putting SDHIs on these really resistant varieties. They don't respond in terms of yield, and so actually margins are looking worse. But that's an ongoing project. But Brian wanted to look at reducing his costs and obviously bringing all those other advantages along with it. So we have this trial here looking at a range of different varieties with different susceptibilities and different programs of fungicides. And I'm going to hand over to Brian to talk about actually what we're doing here.
Right, thank you, Paul. Basically, from this trial, I wanted Nick to lose more hair than I have. Basically, with everything that we're trying to do, we're trying to make sure that the investment we put in our crop is going to make sure that we get better net margins at the end of it. So, background of this field was linseed last year, and it had no cultivations. This was direct drilled with our disc drill, so it hasn't had any sort of medial cultivations done, so it's straight into a first week situation from spring linseed. We then wanted to look at all our varieties that we were growing on our farm, so we predominantly have Siskin, Graham, Chabras and Santiago. They all have their roles within the farm, and then we wanted to make sure that we had one from elsewhere, and so most of them are all within the same yield bracket on the RL results, and so we wanted to find one. So we've actually slipped in Silverstone, which was just a literally plucked from the air, something completely different that I've never managed, so I didn't know what was coming, just to throw in a little bit of a spanner or a monkey that we've got to keep an eye on. That's quite alright, take that, Nick. So we've drilled the varieties in big blocks, so 1/2 a tonne of seed was drilled this way up and down the field, tram lines running full length of the field. So we've got through every single tram line, we've got different varieties all the way along it. Then we said, right, everyone wants to know how we can, what's the idea of how we can lower inputs, and we all get a little bit suckered into speaking to the agronomist, and he's going, you've got to think about this and you've got to think about that. Well, it was really hard to try and wean yourself off that mentality when we start going, right, what is the bare minimum that we feel that we can get away with? And just having those conversations really focused your mind about actually what were we trying to target. We were walking it, we weren't seeing much disease because it was just such a dry year, but we were like, well, we've got potential, we're trying to ensure against not losing that, but how far, where do you put it? And so the idea is that we've got we've got 1/2 a tram line which is completely untreated, so that's pretty much our set, you can't do anything with it. Then we've got 2 tram lines of how low you can go. The lowest we felt that in the current situation, the 3-way decision triangle that we have between Nick, myself and Toby, our agronomist, that's our decision triangle. So we were all out here looking at it and thinking, well, how far, how low? And so all the information is in the booklet you've got given. And then we've got 2 tram lines, which is what we call our farm standard. So this is what pretty much we felt was where we wanted to go as a group for the general. And then we put a Rolls-Royce treatment in where we were thinking, well, actually, invest a little bit more, look after a little bit more, will it pay back? And so the idea is when you come back in November is that we're taking this through, we're going to combine 2/3 of it, leave a third which is then going to go through the trials combine with EnviroField, so we're going to get the actual detail twice over of what's gone on. That can then be replicated, so we'll have a giant matrix of cost of production, and we can see if different varieties under different inputs have actually delivered better or less or more, and looking at a net margin instead of just growing after the big holy grail of a big
Can I just ask you a question there? And Paul and Emily, we talked about yield enhancement network. I mean, that hardly promotes a lower net margin. I mean, do you think there's probably some scope for a margin enhancement network within that program? I mean, if we're looking to make more profit at the end of the day and look after the environment, surely we should be promoting that a bit more.
Well, I always think of yield enhancement a bit like Formula 1 racing. Stuff that happens in there is completely, you're spending stupid amounts of money. It bears no relation to what happens in your car you buy. But some of that technology will come down to the car that you drop by in maybe 10 years' time. So stuff that Yen is doing, because they're trying people doing Yen do all sorts of weird stuff. Some of that will work, but will come down to normal farming practice. a lot of
So
work.
how do I get that when I'm driving my Skoda Yeti? So, because I would like very much to take the work you're doing and be in a group of farmers who compare their margins.
Yeah, well, I think it's whatever floats your boat. Some people are all after the big, oh, here's my pub yield, put it on the table. Yeah, where for me, I put my crops into yen because you get a fantastic report back, you get lots of information, lots of benchmarking. I don't try anything weird and wacky. I put my farm standard into yen just to see where I actually am on that benchmarking scale. And so net margin for me is where it comes down to, and all the work the AHDB are doing with benchmarking. When I know there's a few people who are benchmarking in our group, they know that when I put my crops in, I have my worst field, my best field, and my farm average. And so everyone can see my worst, I bear all, what I think is my best field for yield, and then you can see what comes down, and you see the net margin at the bottom, and there's some really big differences. So it's really what I think farmers are just like you, and there's a lot of talk on Twitter. I know there's several people who are fairly vocal about we need to do more on the net margin scale, and so this is what this trial is trying to set out, that people can, so in November meeting, Emily and her team would have drawn up a simple how-to document, and a farmer can set this up in a square field or any field he wants to. So this is where the knowledge that we're saying, well, we're going to try an idea and look at it from a net margin point of view, and then challenge farmers who will then, in a different weather system, a different climate, will then do the same, and they'll go, how low can I go? Some people will go completely on, well, I won't do anything, I'll just do one fungicide, or I'll do a 1 T2 on one, and then you do all the rest, and that's where the knowledge will come. We've just got an idea here, and we were saying, well, I like to challenge it because all the way through my last 3 years, I've been saying you need to invest to potential and farm to potential. Well, I've been doing tiller counts, shoot counts, I understand what's out there, and so that's where I'm going, well, actually, how low can I go? Where is that sort of cut off where I was actually penalising myself? Because a few years ago, I went too low, and then we got stung in the arse at the end. And so that's where this sort of system, where instead of having it dotted all over the farm, I can walk my agronomist down the untreated, and then if he's still talking to me by the end of it, he'll then walk down the low, the medium and the high, and we have a really good two-way conversation. And every time Toby comes to my office, he just, oh, what do you want to talk about today then, Brian? And so you start challenging him, because I think farmers have got to empower themselves to challenge the industry people to go forward. So that's where a simple, it is a little bit of an extra work, but how many times have you had come for different mixes occasionally, didn't we? So
It's fine.
Yeah.
The other mixes up, we're doing it other places on the farm.
yeah,
100% we're doing.
yeah. So we've got so like the high Rolls Royce is about 3 hectares, the middle is about 2.5, and they're all about roughly about 2.5 hectares. So it's manageable, and so that's what, when we have that decision-making triangle of farmer, I'm always asking about costs. Toby, the agronomist, going, there's some reports of rust and septoria and all this sort of stuff, and then there's Nick going, I can't have 5 different spray mixes. We've got to try and be realistic about how we can deliver it, and so this is, for me, a really simple demonstration, and it challenges people's mindset to really think about, actually, why do we broad spec everything? There's a few people that I know who just go with the same fungicide regardless of variety.
Yeah.
And so is that actually producing a net margin? Should we actually challenge that mindset and say, actually, we've all got the kit, we all got the big sprayer, well, we can actually go a little bit more sort of bit more attention to detail on the whole lot, and will that deliver more money in our back pocket at the end of it? So that's
Excuse me
what
a
we're
minute,
trying to do.
but may I just challenge you very quickly with history? The approach of using lower rates has created resistance,
Yep.
historically. Are you not fearful that you're promoting in 1 year what actually creates a system which may create long-term
I'm not
resistance?
lowering rates. Yeah, so the challenge was with lowering rates induce resistance in a season. Is that basically what we're summing up?
That's basic. Yes, but that's, history has proven that.
Yeah, but I'm not going half rate. I'm picking the right product that,
Right. Okay.
so the correct rate.
If I could just come that bit. I think that's a very old-fashioned view of resistance. We understand the resistance a lot more than we used to now. We now know it depends on the mechanism of resistance, whether low rates or high rates are worse. And that doesn't help you as a farmer, because you might have 3 different diseases out there responding to 3 different modes of action. And whether it's a high rate or a low rate you're putting on will drive resistance differently in those different diseases to different modes of action. But we now know that low rates don't necessarily drive resistance. In some cases, high rates drive resistance.
Then also different varieties will react differently to those input systems. So why do we pick a variety like Sisk in the RL, everyone's going, oh, it's got great scores, bang, 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 and then we go and throw double SDHIs on it and we go, oh, we've just chucked all the kitchen sink at it and I've done it, but then, well, actually, what's the point of actually making a variety that's actually resistant? You might as well stick with Santiago that we know that we breaks down, we can manage it with a high input scoring and we'll get a barn fill. So that's where we've got to be a little bit more smarter, and we've got to and that's what I'm saying, we've got to challenge our mindsets to actually be a bit braver. And that's what I think this sort of, the whole remit of asking farmers to go and say, well, actually, we've all got, can you spare probably another hour's work in a season on the sprayer to do a trial like this, which you can then take through your combine. You've all got your own combines with yield meters, hopefully you'll see a difference. Or you go out there and count the tillers and shoots and things like that, and you score it like we've done with everything that we've done here. It's very simple. Last year when I was actually counting all my shoots and put all the information in, and when we took the samples and 1,000 grain weight off the combine, I predicted our yield across our whole wheat crop to 2%, and that was just counting from 1 to 100. Don't need any technology, it's literally going out there and counting and then doing a multiplication factor that's in the growth guide, and that's all that I did on a spreadsheet. There's different ways to do it, there's different ways to look at it, but the demonstrations that we're doing here and with the strategic farm and what we're trying to develop as a AHDB partnership is to inspire farmers to go and ask those questions and challenge their mindset. Any questions?
Brian, with the low input system, on here you're missing out timings. Now, are you doing any research to actually doing more, not missing out the timings, but using lower rates across the thing, or using different actives so that you've got a mixture of actives throughout the season, perhaps cheaper actives and everything else, but actually holding the disease because you're using it as more preventative measure than getting the situation where you've got disease and then you're having to put something in on those timings when you are going?
Yeah, the times we're trying to keep it simple, so we're trying to get it to be consistent. A demonstration is you can put so many factors into it, so we're trying to keep everything to a sort of a in-line practice that anyone going out there would be 13 noughts and go out there and do it. Normally most varieties are, when we actually walk the varieties, they're all pretty much coming at the same growth stages all the time. So but this year was completely different because we didn't have very much disease at all, so we were sort of hedging our bets on what we were trying to do, and so we were looking at it. So we didn't lower our rates, we were trying to pick the range of chemistry we had to look at net margin at the end of it. And so we weren't going half rate anything, or trying to get away from doing something different. We were going with the right product for the investment that we felt that potential was going to have, but trying to keep the cost as low as possible. So the untrees obviously had nothing apart from herbicides. The low had, I think it's about 50 quid's worth of trace elements and fungicides. Our farm standard on the thing was about 135, so it's quite a big gap. And then when you go out to the Rolls Royce, you're another 30, I can't remember, it was about 15, 20 quid. Yeah. So it's not really that much, but when we started off this process and I was going, right, I've got to protect the potential I've got out here, well actually I did have quite a lot of potential, and that's why T0 and T1 in my farm standard was actually going, I've got to invest in these crops. I don't want to just let them for the sake of like being, I'm going to lower my inputs. Well no, I've got to farm this smartly.
Well yeah, and that's the whole thing, isn't it? Preventative measures must be a good thing.
So it's just how, it's having those two-way conversations and just trying to think about the bigger picture.
Right. You would say you're doing work on biomass development. Obviously there's going to be different rates of biomass development with different varieties, and maybe something in the future we can put more into the RL on that. But have you noticed any particular trends between varieties in harvest index? Presumably you're doing harvest index. Right?
Yeah, we've been measuring biomass all through the season, and all different have different sort of, some grow tall, some grow. The biggest thing that we've really noticed on a wider row system is some that fill out the row, some that don't. But then when we get to the harvest time, we haven't got into that sort of nth degree yet, and it's just once you combine and you want to get going. And but yeah, we're starting to build a bigger picture. So like Santiago for us on a wide row is actually really good because it has a real big biomass bloom at the end, and you capture a lot of it. So you have to wade through it on a wide row, whereas things like Graham and Chabras just sit there like this going, and so you can pretty much walk without touching the row. And so there's different things, and that's where again the RL and things like that, we've got to look at which ones have main tillers, which have side tillers for wider row systems. We've got to be asking the RL to actually give more detail, I think. So we're doing major and minor tiller counts and ear counts at T3, so we actually say which ones are the big ones, which ones are small. And I've got 3 years worth of data that I know that Leeds produced lots of little small ones, but then Santiago had lots of major ones, and then Siskin actually has an average you can't really pick a major and a minor. So there's different things that we're noticing, and so that's just by going out and looking at it and recording it.
So obviously the key is radiation, solar radiation interception. It sounds as if you might be looking at that from what you were saying earlier.
Feeding it in, and there's things in the background that are bubbling that we're trying to get done.
Yeah, I didn't know whether you've not done any work on either north, south or east, west sowing or anything like that.
No. Yeah, time's up.